1 year after the war ended, the galaxy gathered for the dedication of the Ji-1 Kim Memorial Station. The massive structure orbited Kepler Station, where President Kim had been murdered, its crystalline spires catching light from the surrounding nebula in brilliant displays of color. President Young-min Han stood at the podium in the station's central hall, looking out at delegates from hundreds of worlds. The same species that had once questioned humanity's place in the galaxy now listened with respectful attention. "We gather here not to celebrate victory," he began, his voice carrying through the hall, "but to remember a woman who believed that different peoples could live together in peace. President Kim died for that belief. This station ensures that her dream lives on." The memorial was more than just a monument, it was also a warning. The station's elegant design concealed some of the most advanced defensive systems in the galaxy: attack satellites disguised as artistic sculptures, shield generators built into the decorative panels, weapon systems hidden within the memorial gardens. Anyone who looked at the beautiful station would remember what happened to President Kim. Anyone foolish enough to threaten the station would discover what happened to those who murdered human leaders. Ambassador Theklis approached President Han after the ceremony. "It's beautiful," he said, looking up at the crystal spires. "She would have loved it." "She would have preferred that it wasn't necessary," Han replied. "But yes, I think she would have approved of the message it sends." That message was simple. Humanity remembered its dead, and there were consequences for those who harmed the innocent. The Federation Council had offered humanity a permanent seat after witnessing their military capabilities. The offer came with conditions that showed how much the galaxy's perspective had changed. Any species that committed acts of terrorism would face immediate response from human forces. Any government that threatened civilian populations would be placed under human protection. Humanity had become the galaxy's policeman, not through conquest, but through demonstrated competence. Admiral Hyunwoo Park now commanded the largest fleet in galactic history. From his headquarters on Luna Station, he oversaw defense operations across hundreds of star systems. The human fleet was no longer hidden. 400 ships patrolled openly throughout Federation space, a visible reminder of the price of aggression. "Sir," his aide reported during a routine briefing, "we've received a request for assistance from the Quillari government. Pirates have been attacking their outer colonies." "Send the 5th Squadron," Park ordered. "Rules of engagement are standard. Protect the civilians, disable the pirates, avoid casualties if possible." The pirates surrendered the moment they detected human ships approaching. No one in the galaxy wanted to fight humanity anymore. Not after seeing what happened to the Hegemony Alliance. Engineer Nari Yoon had established the Human Defense Initiative, sharing defensive technologies with peaceful species while maintaining humanity's military edge. Her workshops on Luna Station produced shield generators for Federation worlds, but the most advanced systems remained exclusively human. "We're not trying to control the galaxy," she explained to a gathering of alien engineers. "We're trying to make sure that what happened to President Kim never happens to anyone else." The technology sharing program was popular with most species, but it came with strict conditions. Any world that received human defensive systems agreed to regular inspections and non-aggression treaties. Any government that used human technology for offensive purposes would find their systems mysteriously failing. Dr. Yoonja Lee continued her xenological research, but her priorities had changed. The friendly scientist who had once studied alien biology for purely academic reasons now maintained detailed threat assessments of every known species. Her laboratories on Mars had become intelligence analysis centers where human researchers studied potential enemies and allies. "Knowledge is our greatest weapon," she told her staff during a security briefing. "The more we understand about other species, the better we can protect ourselves and our friends." Her research had identified 17 different species that might pose future threats to galactic peace. Human intelligence operatives were already establishing monitoring stations in their space, ready to provide early warning of any aggressive behavior. Captain Minho Choi commanded the Soul's Pride on patrol missions throughout former Hegemony space. The ship that had once been humanity's flagship was now one of dozens of vessels maintaining peace in regions that had been sources of conflict for centuries. "Captain," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving a distress call from the Bendic colony on Zerion 5. They're requesting immediate assistance." "Set course for Zerion 5. Maximum speed," Choi ordered. "What's the situation?" "Refugee crisis, sir. The colony is being overwhelmed by displaced populations from former Drakari worlds. They need supplies and temporary housing." The Soul's Pride arrived within hours, carrying emergency shelters, medical supplies, and food replicators. Captain Choi coordinated the relief effort personally, working alongside Bendic officials to ensure that every refugee family had shelter and food. This was the new reality in former hegemony space. Human ships didn't come as conquerors, but as helpers, protecting the weak and assisting those in need. The contrast with the old hegemony's brutal rule was impossible to miss. The former Drakari worlds had become a special case. With their government dissolved and their military destroyed, the Drakari population faced an uncertain future. Rather than abandoning them to chaos, humanity had established a protectorate system. Colonel Yuna Kim, who had led the ground assault on Drakari Prime, now served as administrator of the reconstruction effort. Her office in the former military command center had been converted into a civilian aid coordination facility. "Status report on the reintegration program," she requested from her staff. "Better than expected, Colonel," replied Dr. Su-Young-an, who had traded her role as a spy for legitimate reconstruction work. 70% of former Drakari military personnel have enrolled in civilian job training. The agricultural restoration program is ahead of schedule, and the new democratic government will hold its first elections next month. The transformation was remarkable. Drakari Prime, once a military fortress world, was becoming a center of learning and culture. Human advisors worked alongside Drakari civilians to build schools, hospitals, and research facilities. The species that had once been the galaxy's most aggressive was learning to live in peace. General Wanho Lim oversaw similar programs throughout former hegemony space. His military engineers built infrastructure on dozens of worlds, while human, medical teams provided healthcare to populations that had been neglected under the old regime. "We're not occupying these worlds," he explained to a gathering of Federation officials. "We're helping them heal. The hegemony ruled through fear and oppression. We're showing them that there's a better way." The results spoke for themselves. Trade increased throughout the region. Scientific cooperation flourished. Species that had been enemies for centuries began working together on joint projects. Dr. Haeun Park had converted her nanite laboratories into peaceful research facilities. The technology that had dismantled hegemony fleets was now being used to clean up environmental damage and restore damaged ecosystems. "The same nanites that can destroy a starship can also repair a polluted ocean," she explained during a scientific conference. "It's all about programming and purpose." Her teams were working on former hegemony worlds to undo centuries of environmental damage caused by military-industrial complexes. Poisoned atmospheres were being cleansed, dead oceans were being restored to life, and barren worlds were being transformed into gardens. Commander Jamin O had traded his role in intelligence warfare for diplomatic work. His hidden base in the asteroid belt had been converted into a communication hub that facilitated peaceful contact between previously hostile species. Information warfare and diplomacy use many of the same skills, he noted during a strategy session. The difference is that diplomacy builds relationships instead of destroying them. His teams monitored communication networks throughout the galaxy, not to gather intelligence for military strikes, but to identify brewing conflicts before they could escalate into violence. Early intervention had prevented 3 potential wars in the past year. The changes weren't limited to former hegemony space. Throughout the galaxy, species were reassessing their relationships with each other and with humanity. The demonstration of human military power had convinced even the most aggressive civilizations that cooperation was preferable to conflict. Fleet Admiral Sung-Jin Nam received regular reports from human monitoring stations throughout the galaxy. The small facilities, staffed by volunteer observers, provided early warning of any military buildups or aggressive behavior. Any threats to report? He asked during his weekly intelligence briefing. Nothing significant, sir, replied the intelligence officer. The Nexar Confederacy is upgrading their defense systems, but our observers confirm it's purely defensive. The Xylan Empire is conducting fleet exercises, but they're following standard peaceful protocols. What about the hegemony survivors? General Vorthak remains in prison on Drakari Prime. He's been writing his memoirs, mostly complaints about. The siege of Drakari Prime began at dawn on the planet's main continent. General Vorthak watched from his command bunker as human forces surrounded every major city without firing a shot. The humans had accomplished what military experts said was impossible. They had blockaded an entire planet in less than 12 hours. General Jiho Shin commanded the ground forces, his troops wearing armor that seemed to predict enemy movements before they happened. The secret was simpler than the Drakari realized. Humanity had been intercepting their quantum communications for years. Sir, reported Colonel Yuna Kim from her position outside the capital city, enemy forces are moving to defensive positions around the government district. They're following Pattern 7 from their tactical manual. General Shin smiled grimly. Then we'll use Response Protocol 7 Alpha. Begin the demonstration. The demonstration was terrifying in its precision. Human forces bypassed every Drakari defensive position, striking at supply lines, communication hubs, and command posts with surgical accuracy. It was as if they knew exactly where every Drakari unit would be before the Drakari themselves had decided. General Vorthak watched his carefully planned defenses crumble in real time. How are they doing this? He demanded of his communications officer. Sir, they seem to know our orders before we give them. That was exactly what was happening. Dr. Kangmin Hong, the human researcher who had spent years studying Drakari technology, had also mapped their entire military communication network. Every order, every battle plan, every strategic decision was being intercepted by human intelligence before it reached Drakari troops. Fleet Admiral Sungjin Nam coordinated the space-based portion of the siege from the bridge of his flagship. The human fleet maintained a loose blockade around the planet, allowing civilian traffic to pass while preventing any military vessels from escaping. Admiral, his tactical officer reported, Drakari High Command is attempting to activate their planet killer device. The Mooncracker weapon? Nam asked. Let them try. The Drakari had one final desperate plan. If they couldn't win the war, they would destroy Earth in revenge. Their most powerful weapon, a battle station the size of a small moon, began powering up its reality disruption cannon. The weapon could literally erase a planet from existence. Captain Kyungmin Park commanded the stealth ship Daegu's Whisper, positioned just outside the battle station's sensor range. His ship carried humanity's most advanced nanite payload, microscopic machines that could disassemble any material they encountered. Nanite deployment in 3, 2, 1, deployed. The nanites spread through space like an invisible cloud, programmed to target the specific metals and crystals used in Drakari technology. They ate through the battle station's hull, power systems, and weapons in minutes. But they were also programmed to avoid organic materials. The Drakari crew watched in horror as their ultimate weapon dissolved around them, while their life support remained intact. Emergency systems activated, sealing the crew sections in protective barriers while the rest of the massive station became raw materials floating in space. Those raw materials didn't drift randomly. The nanites reformed them into letters large enough to be seen from the planet's surface, spelling out President Kim's final words. We are one people, under countless stars. The message was visible from 3 star systems away. General Vorthak realized his position was hopeless when human forces captured his orbital command stations without firing a shot. Colonel Minho Jiang led a boarding party that simply walked through the station's blast doors as if they weren't there. How did you get through our security barriers? Demanded the station commander. Your security systems were designed by engineer So-Young An, Colonel Jiang replied. She's been working for us the whole time. It was the same story throughout Drakari space. Every major installation had been compromised from the inside by human agents who had spent years earning their trust while secretly mapping their weaknesses. Dr. Borahan led the intelligence team that finally cracked the Drakari's most guarded secret. the location of their hidden fleet reserves. For decades, the Drakari had maintained secret shipyards in dark space between the stars, building vessels that didn't appear in any official registry. "We found them," she reported to Admiral Nam. 47 hidden facilities. Over 300 reserve ships. They were planning to use these for a surprise counterattack. "Not anymore," Nam replied. "Captain Park, you know what to do." Captain Park coordinated the most complex military operation in human history. 47 different locations, attacked simultaneously across hundreds of light-years of space. Human stealth fleets appeared at each hidden facility, destroyed the ships and infrastructure, then vanished again before any reinforcements could arrive. The entire operation took exactly 6 hours. The end came when General Vorthak's own military commanders refused to follow his orders. Colonel Nexar, his second-in-command, contacted General Shin directly. "We surrender," the Drakari officer said simply. "Our people have suffered enough for Vorthak's pride." The surrender ceremony took place aboard the Soul's Pride, humanity's original flagship. Supreme Commander Changmin Seo accepted the unconditional surrender of all remaining hegemony forces, while General Vorthak was brought aboard in restraints. "You were fools to resist," Vorthak said to Commander Seo. "Did you think the galaxy would accept human dominance? Other species will unite against you now." Commander Seo looked at the defeated Drakari general with something approaching pity. "You still don't understand. We never wanted to dominate the galaxy. We wanted to be left alone to build our civilization in peace. You made that impossible when you murdered President Kim." The surrender terms were surprisingly lenient. Complete reparations for the assassination, the dissolution of the Hegemony Alliance, and the establishment of human monitoring stations in former hegemony space. No territorial conquest, no enslaved populations, no genocide. President Youngmin Han explained the reasoning in a broadcast to the galaxy. "We are not conquerors. We are gardeners. We will tend the peace that President Kim died believing in, but we will also ensure that the weeds of aggression can never grow again." The monitoring stations were the key to humanity's strategy. Small facilities staffed by human observers, positioned to watch for any resurgence of the militaristic thinking that had led to the assassination. They were also symbols, reminders, of what happened when someone decided that murdering human leaders was acceptable. The galaxy's reaction was mixed. Some species were terrified of humanity's demonstrated power. Others were impressed by their restraint. They had won a total victory while avoiding the mass casualties that usually accompanied galactic wars. Ambassador Theklis met with President Han 3 months after the war ended. "How long have you been planning this?" he asked. "Since the first day we looked up at the stars," Han replied. "We knew we might find friends out there. We also knew we might find enemies. We prepared for both possibilities." The Vortani ambassador was quiet for a moment. "President Kim never knew about the hidden fleets, did she?" "No. She believed in peace through diplomacy. We believed in peace through strength. Both approaches were necessary. The final revelation shocked even humanity's allies. Engineer Nari Yoon released classified information showing that Earth's civilian infrastructure had been dual-purpose from the beginning. Mining ships were actually heavy cruisers. Research stations were fleet bases. Even the orbital farms around Earth contained hidden weapon systems. "We've been preparing for galactic war since our first decade in space," she explained during a Federation Council session. "Not because we wanted war, but because we knew that appearing weak would invite aggression." Dr. Yoonja Lee added her own revelation. "We've been studying your biological and technological weaknesses for 20 years. Every species that welcomed us, every treaty we signed, every cultural exchange, we learned from all of it. The Hegemony Alliance thought they were teaching us our place. Actually, we were learning how to defend ourselves." The scale of humanity's preparation became clear as more classified projects were revealed. Stealth technology that made ships completely invisible. Weapons that could disassemble matter at the quantum level. Defensive systems that could stop any known attack. Most shocking of all was the revelation that humanity had been ready for this war within their first year of contact with alien species. Every advancement they had shown the galaxy over the past 20 years was actually decades-old technology they had been pretending to develop. General Wan Ho Lim explained it simply. We learned early in our history that the most dangerous moment is when your enemies underestimate you. We made sure that moment lasted as long as possible. The war had been won not through superior numbers or advanced technology, but through superior preparation and intelligence. Humanity had spent 20 years appearing weak and naive while secretly building the most powerful military force the galaxy had ever seen. As Admiral Hyunwoo Park said in his after-action report, the Hegemony Alliance made two critical mistakes. First, they assumed we would react to aggression the way they expected us to react. Second, they assumed we were telling them the truth about our capabilities. Never make assumptions about humanity, President Han added during his victory address. We are not what we appear. 6 months after President Kim's assassination, the galaxy settled into a new normal. Humanity had retreated into isolation, just as the Hegemony Alliance had expected. Trade between human and alien worlds had nearly stopped. Human diplomats rarely attended Federation meetings. It seemed the lesson had been learned. General Vorthak of the Drakari reviewed intelligence reports in his command center on the military world of Chronix. The humans are behaving exactly as predicted, he told his staff. They understand their place now. Counselor Zephys agreed from her office on the Alteran homeworld. Our sources report that human military activity has actually decreased. They appear to be focusing on internal matters and avoiding galactic politics. What they didn't know was that human intelligence operatives had been feeding them exactly the information they wanted to hear. The attack began at exactly 800 Galactic Standard Time across 12 star systems simultaneously. It started with what seemed like random system failures. On Chronix, the Drakari Military Command Center lost power for 30 seconds. The backup generators kicked in automatically, and the duty officer logged it as a minor technical glitch. On the Alteran homeworld, their orbital defense platforms went offline for routine maintenance. The maintenance had been scheduled months in advance by their human technical advisors, so no one was concerned. Throughout hegemony space, communication networks experienced mysterious interference that lasted for exactly 17 minutes. Emergency backup systems activated normally, and technicians began investigating what they assumed was equipment failure. Then the real attack began. Admiral Seojin Chai commanded the human First Fleet from the bridge of the warship Incheon's Wrath. The ship materialized from stealth just outside the Drakari home system, along with 49 other vessels that had been invisible to every sensor the galaxy possessed. All ships report ready, Admiral, said his communications officer. Begin Symphony Protocol, Che ordered. The name came from the coordinated nature of the attack. Every human force moved in perfect timing, like musicians playing from the same sheet of music. The symphony was about to begin, and the Hegemony Alliance was going to hear every note. Captain Minho Choi watched from the Soul's Pride as human ships dropped out of stealth throughout the galaxy. In the Alteran system, Admiral Daehyun Kim's Second Fleet appeared. In the Krek system where the Hegemony Alliance held their council meetings, Admiral Seon Ho Yu's Third Fleet surrounded the planet. Sir, reported his tactical officer, all fleets are in position. The enemy hasn't detected our approach. That was because there was nothing to detect. The system failures that had occurred 30 minutes earlier had been caused by quantum viruses, invisible programs that infected alien computer systems and fed false sensor data back to their operators. The Drakari thought they were seeing empty space where 50 human warships were actually positioned. General Vorthak was in his command bunker when the attack on Chronix began. The first indication that something was wrong came when his plasma shield generator shut down completely. Restore the shields, he roared at his technicians. Sir, the generators aren't malfunctioning, came the panicked reply. Someone has override codes. They're shutting us down remotely. That someone was Engineer Soyoung An, who had spent 5 years improving Drakari shield technology, while secretly building backdoors into every system. From her position aboard the human cruiser Busan's Fury, she was systematically disabling the defenses of every major Drakari installation. Shields down on military installations 1 through 15, she reported to Admiral Che. Orbital defense platforms are offline. ground-based weapon systems are experiencing mysterious technical difficulties. The Drakari scrambled their fleet, over 200 ships that they believed made them the strongest military force in the galaxy. What they discovered was that human technology had advanced far beyond their understanding. The first Drakari squadron to engage the human fleet was completely destroyed in less than 3 minutes. Human railguns fired projectiles at 15% of light speed, while Drakari plasma cannons couldn't penetrate the new shields that protected human ships. Impossible. General Vorthak watched the battle unfold from his bunker. Our intelligence said the humans only had primitive weapons. Captain Jinsu Quan commanded one of the human stealth frigates that struck at Drakari supply depots throughout their space. His ship, the Daegu Shadow, appeared long enough to destroy a fuel refinery with precision strikes, then vanished again before the Drakari could respond. Target destroyed, no civilian casualties, he reported. Moving to next objective. This was crucial to human strategy. They were demonstrating overwhelming military superiority while carefully avoiding harm to non-combatants. Every strike was surgical, destroying military and government targets while leaving civilian infrastructure untouched. Colonel Yuna Kim led the ground assault on Chronix itself. Her power armor was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Adaptive systems that analyzed incoming weapons fire and adjusted their defenses accordingly. Drakari plasma rifles that could melt through battle tank armor barely scratched the human suits. Objective secured, she reported as her troops took control of the Drakari Military Command Center. General Vorthak is in custody. All military command staff are captured alive. The battle for Chronix lasted 8 hours. When it ended, the planet's military infrastructure was completely destroyed, but not a single civilian had been harmed. The Drakari population watched human soldiers distributing food and medical supplies to anyone who needed them. Major Do Hyun Yu commanded atmospheric fighters during the assault on the Alteran homeworld. His squadron faced the galaxy's most advanced air defense systems, energy barriers that could stop any known aircraft. The barriers were useless against human fighters that could shift between dimensions. Phase shift engaged, Yu reported as his squadron passed through the Alteran, defenses like they weren't there. Beginning precision strikes on military targets, the Alterans discovered that their orbital defense platforms had been compromised months earlier. Dr. Kang Min Hong, their trusted human researcher, had installed override systems in every critical installation. From his position aboard the human carrier Gwangju Storm, he systematically shut down their defenses. I studied their systems for 5 years, he told Admiral Kim during the battle. I know their weaknesses better than they do. Commander Jamin O coordinated the information warfare aspect of the attack. From his hidden base, he broadcast messages throughout hegemony space on every communication frequency. People of the Hegemony Alliance, his voice reached every world simultaneously. We are not your enemies, we are not conquerors. We are teachers, and today's lesson is simple. There are consequences for murdering those we love. The message continued. Your leaders chose to assassinate President Ji-won Kim because they feared what humanity might become. Today, they learn what humanity actually is. We could destroy your worlds, but we choose not to. We could kill your leaders, but we prefer justice to revenge. The galaxy watched in shock as human forces demonstrated capabilities that shouldn't have existed, ships that could become invisible, weapons that could penetrate any defense, soldiers wearing armor that adapted to any threat. The Vortani ambassador Theklis was in the Federation Council chambers when news of the attack reached them. Representatives from dozens of species watched the battle reports with growing amazement. How is this possible? Asked the Centaurian delegate. Our intelligence said the humans had less than 60 ships. Our intelligence was wrong, Theklis replied, though, privately he wasn't surprised. President Kim had once told him that humanity's greatest strength was that their enemies never truly understood them until it was too late. Dr. Haeun Park deployed her nanite swarms against the hegemony's reserve fleets. The microscopic robots ate through ship hulls like acid, but they were programmed to avoid life support systems. Entire squadrons found their vessels falling apart around them, while their air and power remained untouched. Nanite deployment successful, she reported from her laboratory ship. Enemy fleet disabled, all crew members alive and unharmed. The psychological effect was devastating. Hegemony commanders realized they were facing an enemy that could kill them instantly but chose not to. Every human attack sent the same message: we are in complete control, and we are being merciful. Within 18 hours, 3 of the 6 Hegemony Alliance species had surrendered independently. The Taraxians, Quillari, and Bendic governments all sent desperate messages to President Han, begging for peace terms. President Han's response was broadcast throughout the galaxy. Any species that renounces the Hegemony Alliance and agrees to non-aggression treaties will be granted immediate ceasefire status. We have no quarrel with peoples who choose peace over domination. But the Drakari, Alterans, and Crexians refused to surrender. General Vorthak, even in captivity, transmitted orders for his remaining forces to fight to the death. The Alterans activated their doomsday weapon, a planet killer that could crack worlds. The Crexians mobilized their hidden reserve fleets. None of it mattered. Captain Kyungmin Park commanded the task force that eliminated the Crexian reserves in a single coordinated strike. 47 systems attacked simultaneously. The hidden fleets. The galaxy watched humanity mourn. For 2 weeks after President Kim's assassination, human space fell silent. No trade ships left their ports. No diplomatic messages were sent. Human colonies went dark, communicating only with Earth and each other. The funeral was broadcast across human space, but nowhere else. Billions of humans watched as President Kim's empty coffin, there was no body to bury, was carried through the streets of Seoul by honor guards from every human world. The ceremony was simple and dignified, exactly as she would have wanted. President Youngmin Han gave a short speech at the gravesite. Ji-won Kim believed that different peoples could live together in peace. She died for that belief. We will not let her death be meaningless. The galaxy's leaders watched the funeral coverage and nodded to themselves. This was the expected response: grief, sadness, and quiet acceptance of the lesson they had been taught. The Hegemony Alliance issued a statement expressing sympathy for humanity's loss, while reminding them that cooperation required understanding one's place in galactic society. What they didn't see were the ships moving in the darkness between stars. Admiral Hyunwoo Park stood in the secret command center buried deep beneath Luna Station. The facility didn't appear on any official blueprints. It had been built during humanity's first decade in space, back when they weren't sure if they would find friends or enemies among the stars. "Report," he said to General Wonho Lim, who had arrived from Earth an hour earlier. "All reserve forces are activated and moving to staging positions. The civilian ships have been recalled and are being converted as planned. Dr. Lee estimates another week before Project Prometheus is fully operational." Park nodded, looking at the holographic display that showed human space. Red dots marked official fleet positions that the galaxy could see and track. Blue dots showed the real positions of humanity's hidden forces, ships that officially didn't exist, built in secret facilities and crewed by volunteers who had spent years training for this moment. "How many ships do we actually have?" "General," Lim asked. "Officially? 53 vessels in our defensive fleet," Park replied. "Actually, over 400 combat-ready ships plus support vessels." While humanity grieved publicly, Colonel Yoona Kim was activating sleeper cells across Federation space. For 20 years, humans had been establishing themselves throughout the galaxy as traders, researchers, students, and diplomats. They had built reputations as friendly, curious people eager to learn about alien cultures. In reality, many of them were intelligence operatives. On the Alteran homeworld, Dr. Kangmin Hong had spent 5 years studying their atmospheric processors. His research papers were published in their most prestigious scientific journals. What the Alterans didn't know was that he had also mapped every critical system in their industrial infrastructure. On the Drakari military world of Chronix, engineer So-Young-an had designed improvements to their plasma shield generators. The Drakari were proud of their defensive technology and had welcomed human assistance in making it more efficient. They never suspected that the improvements included hidden back doors that could shut down the shields completely. Throughout Federation space, hundreds of humans like Dr. Hong and Engineer An received coded messages. The time for studying and learning was over. Now it was time to put their knowledge to use. Dr. Yunji Li worked around the clock in her expanded laboratory complex on Mars. Project Prometheus had grown far beyond studying alien biology. It was now humanity's most secret weapons program. "Show me the quantum disruptor analysis," she said to her assistant, Dr. Min-jae Park. The holographic display showed the weapon that had killed President Kim, a device that disrupted molecular bonds at the quantum level. It was considered the most advanced personal weapon in the galaxy. "We've managed to reverse engineer the core technology," Dr. Park reported. "But our version is different. Instead of disrupting organic molecules, it can target specific materials, ship hulls, weapon systems, even the quantum processors that run their computers." Dr. Li smiled grimly. "And the delivery system?" "That's where it gets interesting. The Drakari plasma shields that protect their ships? We found 17 different ways to penetrate them. The Alteran energy barriers, useless against our modified disruptors, and the hegemony stealth technology. We can see through it," Dr. Li finished. "Good. How many units can we produce?" "With our new manufacturing facilities, 10,000. Disruptor rifles within a month. Vehicle-mounted versions within 6 weeks. Ship-based systems." Dr. Park checked his calculations. "We'll have enough to outfit the entire fleet." Engineer Nari Yoon was overseeing the most massive industrial conversion in human history. Every major manufacturing facility on Earth, Luna, Mars, and the outer colonies had been retooled for war production. Civilian factories that made air recyclers were now building weapon systems. Shipyards that constructed cargo vessels were assembling warships. The galaxy thought humanity had 53 military ships. They were wrong. Humanity had been building warships disguised as civilian vessels for decades. The mining ship orbiting Jupiter was actually a heavy cruiser with enough firepower to level a city. The research station near Saturn was a fleet base with repair facilities and weapon stockpiles. "How long until full conversion is complete?" asked Captain Jinsu Kwan, who had just arrived from the outer system. "Another week," Nari replied. "But we can begin operations with what we have now. The stealth frigate squadrons are already deployed to their target systems." Captain Kwan nodded. His ships were invisible to every sensor system the galaxy possessed. Human stealth technology had advanced far beyond what they had shown their neighbors. The Hegemony Alliance was watching for human fleet movements and seeing exactly what humanity wanted them to see. Nothing. Dr. Haeyun Park was putting the finishing touches on humanity's most terrifying creation. The nanite swarms looked harmless. Tiny robots smaller than bacteria, floating in sealed containers like metallic dust. But each nanite was a sophisticated machine capable of dismantling any material at the molecular level. "How do they work?" asked General Lim during his inspection of the facility. "Simple concept, complex execution," Dr. Park explained. "We release them in space near enemy ships. They're programmed to target specific materials, the metals and ceramics used in Drakari hulls, the synthetic crystals in Alteran power systems. They eat through ship hulls like acid, but they're smart enough to avoid life support systems." "You're saying they can disable ships without killing the crews?" "Exactly. We can turn an entire enemy fleet into floating debris while keeping the occupants alive. It sends a message. We could have killed you, but we chose not to." The most important work was being done by people the galaxy had never heard of. Commander Jamin O was coordinating intelligence operations from a hidden base in the asteroid belt. His teams had spent years mapping every major military installation, government facility, and industrial complex in hegemony space. "We know more about their capabilities than they do," he reported to Admiral Park during a secure briefing. "The Drakari have been inflating their military strength reports for decades. Their actual fleet is 60% smaller than they claim. The Alterans have been covering up systemic failures in their defense networks, and the other hegemony species." He shrugged. "Most of them are barely holding their militaries together." Captain Minho Choi received new orders while the Soul's Pride was docked at a repair station near Earth. The ship had been damaged during a training exercise and needed extensive repairs. In reality, it was being fitted with weapons and systems that officially didn't exist. "Captain," said Admiral Park during a private meeting, "how do you feel about commanding the flagship of the largest battle fleet in human history?" "I thought we only had 50 ships, sir." "Officially, yes. Unofficially," Park smiled. "You'll be commanding over 100 vessels, including ships that can punch holes through planets." The conversion of civilian infrastructure continued around the clock. Space elevators that normally carried trade goods were now moving military equipment. Passenger ships were being fitted with weapon systems and armor. Even the orbital farms around Earth had hidden weapon platforms built into their superstructures. President Young Min Han made carefully staged public appearances, looking appropriately sad and subdued. He gave speeches about mourning President Kim and hoping for peaceful solutions to galactic tensions. Foreign diplomats reported back to their governments that humanity seemed broken and defeated. Behind closed doors, President Han was reviewing target lists with his military commanders. "The primary objectives are clear," he said during a classified briefing. "We want the leadership of the Hegemony Alliance to understand that there are consequences for murdering our people, but we're not conquerors. We don't want to rule the galaxy." "What do we want?" asked Admiral Park. "Justice for President Kim, reparations for the attack, and a guarantee that this never happens again to any species." President Han's voice hardened. "And if they refuse those terms? Then we teach them why humanity survived long enough to reach the stars," General Lim replied. The final piece of humanity's preparation involved their newest allies. Ambassador Theclis arrived on Earth for what was publicly described as a condolence visit. In reality, he was coordinating. The Galactic Unity Festival on Kepler Station was the biggest celebration in Federation space. Representatives from hundreds of worlds gathered to celebrate another year of peace and cooperation. The massive space station rotated slowly, its transparent dome showing the beautiful nebula that surrounded it. President Ji-won Kim walked through the crowded corridors, greeting delegates from dozens of different species. Her security detail, led by Commander Taehyun Kang, stayed close but tried not to be obvious. The festival was supposed to be a safe space where all species could meet as equals. President Kim called out Ambassador Theclis, approaching with his forearms spread in the Vortani greeting gesture. "I'm so pleased you could attend. This festival represents everything the Federation stands for." Ji-won smiled warmly. "It's wonderful to see so many different peoples coming together in peace. This is what we dreamed of when we first reached for the stars." The main event was scheduled for the evening, a grand ceremony where each member species would present a symbol of their culture to be added to the festival monument. President Kim would be speaking on behalf of humanity, presenting a simple globe of Earth made from materials gathered from every human colony. Commander Kang checked his security readings for the 100th time that day. Something felt wrong, but he couldn't put his finger on it. The crowd was friendly. The other delegates seemed genuine, and their security sweeps had found nothing dangerous. "Ma'am," he said quietly to President Kim, "I'd like to add 2 more agents to your detail for the ceremony." "Is there a specific threat?" she asked. "No specific threat, but with this many species in one place." He didn't finish the sentence, but she understood. As evening approached, 10,000 beings from across the galaxy gathered in the station's central amphitheater. The dome above showed stars and swirling cosmic dust in brilliant colors. It was beautiful, a perfect backdrop for a celebration of galactic unity. President Kim stood backstage, holding the Earth globe and reviewing her speech one last time. She wanted to get the words right. This wasn't just about representing humanity, but about showing that different species could work together despite their differences. 5 minutes, Madam President," said a festival organizer. The amphitheater fell quiet as the ceremony began. One by one, species representatives came forward to place their cultural symbols in the monument. The Alterans brought a crystal that sang in harmonious tones, The Vortani offered a piece of living art that changed colors as they watched. Finally, it was humanity's turn. President Kim walked to the podium, the Earth globe cradled in her hands. The crowd of 10,000 beings looked up at her with curiosity and respect. She began to speak. Friends from across the galaxy. Her voice carried clearly through the amphitheater's speakers. Humanity comes to this festival with humble hearts and open minds. We bring this globe, made from materials that represent every human world, every colony, every outpost where our people have made their homes among the stars. She held up the beautiful sphere, which caught the light from the nebula above and seemed to glow from within. But we don't bring this as a symbol of human achievement. We bring it as a promise. Just as this globe is made from pieces of many worlds brought together, so too can our species work together to build something greater than any of us could create alone. The crowd was quiet, listening intently. Many had never heard a human leader speak before. We pledge to be good neighbors, fair traders, and loyal friends to all who share our values of peace and cooperation. We pledge to defend not just our own people, but any who are threatened by those who would use force instead of reason. Commander Kang, watching from the side of the stage, noticed movement in the upper galleries. His hand moved instinctively toward his weapon, but the figures seemed to be just late-arriving delegates finding their seats. President Kim continued her speech. The universe is vast and full of wonders we have yet to discover. But the greatest wonder is not found in distant stars or alien worlds. It's found in moments like this, when different species choose to stand together instead of apart. She took a step toward the monument, ready to place the Earth globe in its designated spot. The quantum disruptor beam struck her without warning. The weapon fired from 3 different locations simultaneously: the upper gallery, a maintenance access tunnel, and a service corridor. The beams converged on President Kim with perfect precision, dissolving her molecular structure in an instant. Commander Kang drew his weapon and shouted orders to his team, but it was too late. Where President Kim had been standing, there was nothing, not even dust. The quantum disruptors had unmade her completely, leaving only empty space and the Earth globe falling toward the floor. The amphitheater erupted in chaos. 10,000 beings screamed, shouted, and tried to flee in every direction. Some species had never seen violence before and didn't understand what had happened. Others recognized the attack and panicked. Kang caught the falling globe before it could shatter on the floor. His training kicked in as he coordinated with station security to lock down the area. But he already knew the attackers were gone. Quantum disruptors required careful positioning and timing. This had been planned for weeks or months. Within minutes, the galaxy's news networks were broadcasting the assassination. The images spread across thousands of worlds. President Kim, speaking about unity and friendship, the sudden flash of the disruptor beams, the empty space where she had stood. On Earth, Vice President Youngmin Han was awakened at 3 a.m. His aide's face was pale as she delivered the news. "Sir, President Kim has been assassinated on Kepler Station. You need to be sworn in immediately." Youngmin sat up in bed trying to process what he was hearing. Assassinated? How? By whom? Quantum disruptors, sir. 3 simultaneous shots. The attackers escaped, but preliminary evidence suggests Hegemony Alliance involvement. Dr. Soman Yang, the president's personal physician, was also on Kepler Station attending the festival. Commander Kang brought her to the crime scene, hoping against hope that something could be done. She knelt where President Kim had been standing, running her medical scanner over the empty space. The readings confirmed what everyone already knew, but nobody wanted to believe. "Quantum disruptors don't leave anything behind," she said quietly. "The molecular bonds were completely severed. There's nothing left to save." Admiral Hyunwoo Park received the news while reviewing fleet deployments on Luna Station. His face went stone cold as he activated emergency protocols. Within hours, every human ship in space received coded orders to return to defensive positions around Earth and the colonies. The Hegemony Alliance wasted no time claiming responsibility. General Vorthak appeared on Galactic News Network 6 hours after the assassination, his reptilian features showing no emotion. The human leadership made a grave error in judgment, he announced. They believed their rapid advancement gave them the right to dictate terms to species that have maintained galactic order for millennia. This action was necessary to prevent their corrupting influence from spreading to other developing worlds. The statement continued. We call upon the Galactic Federation to recognize that humanity is not ready for full membership. They lack the wisdom and restraint necessary to be trusted with advanced technology and political power. Counselor Zephys of the Alterans added her own statement. The humans' emotional instability makes them dangerous. Their violent history on their own planet proves they cannot be trusted in civilized galactic society. This unfortunate incident could have been avoided if they had accepted their proper place. The galaxy watched to see how humanity would respond. Most species expected protests, diplomatic complaints, maybe economic sanctions. Some thought humans might withdraw from galactic society entirely, intimidated by the demonstration of hegemony, power. They were all wrong. On Earth, President Youngmin Han stood before a joint session of the Global Congress. Every human leader, military commander, and department head was present either in person or by secure connection. The session was not broadcast. What happened in this room would remain secret. My fellow humans, he began, his voice calm but carrying an undertone that made everyone listen carefully. Today we learned that there are those in the galaxy who believe they can murder our leaders without consequences. They believe we will accept this lesson and submit to their idea of galactic order. He paused, looking around the room at faces filled with grief and anger. They have made a terrible mistake. They killed President Kim because they feared what humanity might become. Today they're going to learn what humanity actually is. Admiral Park stood up. Mr. President, I request permission to activate Protocol 7. Granted. General Lim rose next. Sir, I request authorization to mobilize all reserve forces. Authorized. Doctor. Lee's voice came through the speakers from Mars. Mr. President, Project Prometheus is ready for implementation. Begin implementation immediately. Around the room, other officials requested and received authorization for programs that officially didn't exist. Plans that had been prepared in secret for decades. Weapons, ships, and strategies that no alien species knew about. The Hegemony Alliance expected humanity to mourn, protest, and eventually submit. Instead, they had awakened something that had been quietly preparing for this moment since. President Ji-won Kim stood at the podium, looking out at the sea of faces before her. The United Earth Assembly Hall buzzed with excitement. Today was special. After 20 years of careful talks and proving themselves, humanity had finally been accepted into the Galactic Federation. My fellow humans, Ji-won began, her voice carrying across the silent hall. Today we take our place among the stars not as conquerors but as partners. We join a community that spans thousands of worlds and millions of species. The crowd erupted in cheers. Ji-won smiled, remembering the long journey that brought them here. She was only 45, but she felt the weight of representing all of humanity. Her black hair was streaked with early gray from the stress of negotiations with alien species, who viewed humans with suspicion. On Luna Station, Admiral Hyunwoo Park watched the speech through his office window that looked out at Earth below. His fleet was small compared to other galactic powers, only 50 ships, but they were well built and crewed by the best humanity had to offer. Each ship represented years of careful planning and construction. Sir, his aide said, entering the office. The Vortani trade agreement is ready for final approval. Hyunwoo nodded. The Vortani were humanity's first real allies in the galaxy. Their insect-like appearance had frightened many humans at first, but they proved to be honest traders and fair negotiators, unlike some other species humanity had encountered. Dr. Hyunji Lee was in her laboratory deep beneath the surface of Mars, studying tissue samples from 12 different alien species. Understanding their biology was crucial for medical cooperation and, if needed, defense. She had spent 5 years learning everything she could about galactic life forms. The samples told interesting stories. The Drakari, a reptilian species, had redundant organ systems that made them incredibly hard to kill. The blue-skinned Alterans could survive in near-vacuum conditions. Each species had evolved different strengths, but humans had something unique: adaptability. "Doctor," her assistant called out, "the president wants your report on biological compatibility for the trade missions." Yunja looked up from her microscope. "Tell her we can work with most species safely. The Vortani are completely compatible. The others will need to be careful." Captain Minho Choi stood on the bridge of the Soul's Pride, humanity's flagship. The ship was beautiful, sleek lines of metal and ceramic armor, powered by fusion reactors that engineer Nari Yoon had designed. They were preparing for their first official diplomatic mission to Vortani space. "Captain," his communications officer said, "we're receiving a message from the Vortani embassy." The main screen lit up with the image of Ambassador Theklis, a Vortani, whose forearms moved in what humans had learned was a gesture of friendship. His compound eyes glittered as he spoke. "Captain Choi, we look forward to welcoming the Soul's Pride to our homeworld. This trade agreement will benefit both our peoples greatly." Minho smiled and bowed slightly. "The honor is ours, Ambassador. We're excited to learn more about Vortani culture and technology, but not everyone in the galaxy was happy about humanity's acceptance into the Federation." In a dark meeting room on the planet Krex, representatives from 6 different species gathered around a circular table. The Drakari delegation leader, General Vorthak, slammed his clawed hand on the table. "The humans advanced too quickly. In 50 years, they went from primitive chemical rockets to fusion drives. In another 50, they might challenge our dominance." "They breed like insects," hissed Counselor Zephys of the Alterans. "Their population grows faster than any species in the galaxy. Give them a few centuries and they'll outnumber us all." The Hegemony Alliance, as they called themselves, had controlled galactic politics for over 1,000 years. They decided which species could join the Federation and which ones would remain isolated on their homeworlds. Humanity's rapid advancement threatened their careful balance of power. Back on Earth, President Ji-won Kim was meeting privately with Ambassador Theklis in her office. The Vortani's 4 arms moved nervously as he spoke. "President Kim, I must warn you. Not all species welcome humanity's membership in the Federation. Some see your rapid advancement as threatening." Ji-won set down her teacup and looked at the ambassador seriously. "What kind of threats are we talking about?" "Political pressure, trade restrictions, perhaps isolation," Theklis replied. "The Hegemony Alliance has ways of making life difficult for species they don't approve of. And if we refuse to be intimidated?" Theklis's compound eyes dimmed. "Then they might take more direct action. The galaxy has a long history of accidents happening to species that don't know their place." That evening, Ji-won called an emergency meeting with her top advisors. Admiral Hyunwoo Park flew in from Luna Station. General Won-ho Lim arrived from the military headquarters in Seoul. Dr. Yoon-ji Lee connected via secure video link from Mars. "We have a problem," Ji-won began, and explained the ambassador's warning. Admiral Park leaned forward. "Our intelligence suggests the hegemony has been watching us closely. They've sent scout ships to monitor our colonies and military installations." General Lim pulled up a holographic display showing human space. "We have defensive positions around Earth, Luna, and Mars. Our outer colonies are more vulnerable." Dr. Lee's image flickered as she spoke from Mars. "I've been analyzing their biological weaknesses. If they move against us, we need to be prepared." "I hope it doesn't come to that," Ji-won said. "But we need contingency plans. How quickly can we mobilize our forces?" "Our official fleet could be ready in 72 hours, Admiral Park replied. "But if we activate the reserves—" "Reserves?" General Lim asked. Park smiled grimly. "Let's just say we've been more prepared than our neighbors realize." Meanwhile, engineer Nari Yoon was working late in her laboratory on Luna Station. The fusion drives she had designed were impressive, but they weren't her only project. Hidden in classified sections of her workshop were prototypes for technologies that officially didn't exist. Stealth systems that could hide ships from any known sensors. Weapons that could crack a planet's crust. Defensive shields that could stop anything the galaxy could throw at them. Humanity had been busy during their 20 years of diplomatic negotiations. Captain Minho Choi received new orders, as the Soul's Pride prepared to depart for Vortani space. "Change of plans, Captain," came Admiral Park's voice over the secure channel. "We're adding 2 escort ships to your mission. Is there a problem, sir?" "Precautionary measures. The Galaxy is watching this trade mission closely. We want to make sure nothing goes wrong." The next morning, President Ji-won Kim stood before the United Earth Assembly again. This time, her message was different. "My fellow humans," she began, "we enter the galactic community with open hands and peaceful hearts. We seek friendship, trade, and cooperation with all species who share these values." She paused, looking directly into the cameras that would broadcast her words across human space. "But let no one mistake our desire for peace as weakness. We have learned through our history that peace must sometimes be defended. We stand ready to protect our people, our allies, and our values against any who would threaten them." The crowd cheered, but there was a different quality to it now, determination mixed with hope. In the Hegemony Alliance meeting room, the alien leaders watched the broadcast with growing anger. "She dares to threaten us?" General Vorthak growled. "Perhaps it's time to teach these humans a lesson," Counselor Zephys suggested. "Show them what happens to species that forget their place." They began planning what they thought would be a simple demonstration of power, a quick strike to humble humanity and remind the galaxy who really controlled galactic politics. They had no idea what they were about to unleash. As President Ji-won Kim prepared for bed that night, she looked out her window at the stars. Somewhere, out there, alien species were deciding humanity's fate. She hoped for peace, but she knew her people were ready for whatever came next. The golden dawn of humanity's galactic age was about to be tested by fire.